And I think as soon as Dave says we're good to go, then we're going to be good to go.
Brilliant.
Maybe at this point I should, well, I probably should wait and just give the credits in a moment so that it's all recorded. There's a suggestion here from Sasha that perhaps at the moment we need to forsake YouTube. And yes, I've got an okay from Dave, so we're good to go.
Good stuff.
Great stuff. So before we move across to start the chat properly with Simon, again, let me just introduce myself. I'm Charlie Holland. We're here on Clown Power, run by Zoological. And Zoological depends on having your patronage in order to help it exist and continue. And I'm going to just read out a little list of some of the people who are already helping the channel to be here. So, pledging a regular amount for ongoing support: Duncan Cameron, Flat Hat, Frankie Anderson, Piero Grandinetti, Ricky Jacque, Tweedy, Alexandra, and Yvette Menard. So, have a think about whether you'd like to join them on a regular basis. If you can't do that, but you do have a little bit of money at the moment, and I know times are tough, there's also a PayPal for donations. And at the moment, we can just give a credit to Davis Bullock, Charlotte Parry-Jones, Sarah Slater, Yoti Benix, Jose Rodriguez, Elimina Sifa, Lexi Strauss, Adrian Barker, Hilary Chaplin, Duncan Cameron, G. Carroll, Antonella Casella, John Davison, and Rachel Kimrow. So lots of people there already giving. Please do have a think about giving it. And I think that's probably enough of a preamble. I think it's 8 minutes past. It's time that we cracked on. And let's welcome in Simon here. And I'm going to start with the first question, which is about, why ever have you been invited to come on to Clown Power? Are you a clown?
Well, I've been called all kinds of things over the years, Charlie. Yes, and I think what I do is very much rooted in clown. You know, I started young and moved into physical theatre and did a lot of work with mask, and everything I do returns to this idea of the human connection. So yeah, I would class myself as a performer who clowns. I do have a bit of a phobia about this thing where people say I'm a real clown. You know, at the end of the day, I'm a human being who wants to engage at a very personal level with his audience, and I tend to do that through failure and humour. So yeah, go on, I'm a clown, and I've known Dave for years, so I think he's roping in old cohorts.
Fantastic. And now I think if I'm right, you're currently living in Limerick.
I am. I'm in Limerick in Ireland.
Don't sound like you have a sort of a native accent for Limerick. Where do you hail from originally?
So originally, grew up in Manchester, just round the corner from Bellevue, and that's where all this nonsense started. So yeah, I'm a Manchester lad. Tell
us then about how it started. Tell us Bellevue, for those people who don't know Bellevue, and how it got started.
Well, Bellevue was the showground of the world, as it was called. It was, all intents and purposes, one of the first of these entertainment parks. We had a speedway with motorbikes and cinder track. We had a zoo. We had a ballroom, the circus, of course, and the fairground. And it was all there just on Hyde Road in Manchester. And everybody in Manchester went to Bellevue. You know, that's where most people's parents met on the... and yeah, so... I think the first time I went was as a very, very young child. My grandfather worked there, and he took me to see the circus show at Christmas, and ever since then I was hooked, and that's, yeah.
Great. And was it sort of Bellevue's own circus show, or was it?
That was in the days of George LeCoq, yeah.
LeCoq, known for his elephants historically, yeah.
Yeah, so then the circus sort of dwindled away. Bobby Roberts came in mid-80s, I think, sort of 83, 84 for a couple of years. And then Hoffman's came in, I think, for a year, around 85, maybe 86. I'm not, but then that was the end of it. It sort of turned into a housing estate. It's now a wimpy housing estate. There's very little left of any of the grounds or anything. Some of the street names relate to its past history.
But you're left, fortunately, and still performing. And sort of, how did you get started on that route then? What was was there a particular show that you saw? Was there a particular workshop that you thought that looks intriguing? Or did somebody just steal you and take you into the stage and go, you're on now?
It was a bit like that, yeah. As I say, my grandfather and my father worked at Bellevue for a period of time. And so I would spend a lot of time there. You know, this was a magical world that if you were off on school holidays or whatever, you know, where would you sooner go? I'll go to work with my granddad, you know. You never forget the smell of big cat pee on straw as a child. It sort of dries your eyes out, but it was still this really exotic world to go. And I think from seeing the trad shows there, and definitely Jacque Fawcett was a bit of an inspiration to see this man being as childish and doing some of the things that he did. It was a light bulb moment for me as a child. And, you know, can I do this as a job? And that's how it started, you know. And I ended up working school holidays at Bellevue and just hanging around and being there. And it's what I wanted to do from that early age. And yeah. I've sort of lost you, Charlie, a little bit. It's all frozen. I don't know if anyone can hear me. All the pictures are frozen on the screen at the moment.
I can hear you. I can't hear Charlie.
The first on stage. Unstable internet connection. Let me just.
So while Charlie, probably I'll carry on talking if people can hear me. No. So yeah, I'll continue. So yeah, I had this massive passion for what was seen as trad circus, traditional tented shows, and it stuck with me. Running in parallel with that, as a boy, I was also playing musical instruments, so mainly the trumpet. Oh, Charlie's back. No.
hopefully for how long, I don't know.
Oh, we got, you know, I've got voice, but no images. Anyway. So, Charlie, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's good. So I think I sort of explained there, I had this passion and it stemmed from sort of being around Bellevue. And I was just saying, running in parallel with that, I played the trumpet as well. And so the music was this ongoing thing in my life. And that was where performance came in from a very early age of sort of probably 7 or 8.
And then did you get to do some formal training at some point? Did you study it, or always informally?
No, I left mainstream school and went to Chetham's Music School. And when I left Chetham's, I was very much playing a lot of music and doing circus skills through Manchester Circus School and part-time work wherever I could get it, but that was never the main driver. But I'd done a few small tours with music and orchestras, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't the path I wanted to be down. And I ended up going to France. And to cut a long story short, I studied in France for a couple of years in the mid-80s. And, well, latter 80s, 86, 87. And from that physical theatre background, it was then that I realised that I could mix or play around with all these different elements of theatrical performance, be it mask, be it clown, bouffon, or just physical movement. And the more I explored that, and the more I started to, I suppose, play with my own career, I started to incorporate music as well. And then it gels, and that's the journey I've been on since then. And yeah, so sort of trained formally with LeCoq, and been doing it ever since.
As well as LeCoq, I believe you spent a little bit of time with Philippe Gaulier. Is that right?
Yeah. So that was later. I'm a big fan of workshops, and I'm a big fan of taking time out to sort of reflect on what I do. And I suppose early 2000, I spent quite a considerable bit of time with Philippe, looking at clown through Le Jeu, and looking at Buffon principally. Spent a lot of work and time with Buffon. And even though Gaulier and LeCoq follow similar paths, there is some huge differences. I find Philippe extremely playful. I understand the game, and I find that mode of challenge or provocateur very, very, it works well with my mindset. So Philippe opened up other avenues which weren't there, and I became a lot more playful and less technical.
Could you expand a little bit on the sort of the way that Gaulier works, and why some people find it difficult, or that your experience, some people found it difficult when you were doing the training?
Yeah, I mean, people do find it a challenge. I think you have to be comfortable first in yourself. And I don't think anyone really explains to you before you do work with Philippe that this is a game. From the moment he walks in the morning and says hello to you, and then asks everyone else, have I said hello to everyone? You know, the games are starting from the minute he walks in the door. And it is, whether you want to call it via negativa or whatever you want to call it, it's a mode of engagement with the student where he doesn't tell you what to do. He's provoking you to make a change. And often those provocations can be quite cutting. But that's the idea, is to make that split decision to change. You know, I remember, I still see him occasionally, and he calls me roast beef to this day. You know, that's what I was called. I was either called roast beef or the ugliest woman he's ever seen. You know, and he works on this method of a signal, a drum. You come on, you work. If it's dull, if it's boring, you need to change. And I think what I got from that was the importance of really listening to your audience. As you're performing, as you're doing your stuff, listening to the audience and feeling and sensing that this is, you know, there's tumbleweed, let's move on. Let's find a new game. And I think that's what Gaulier teaches you, is how to keep the game alive. When you start a game, it's how do you keep it going? And if it's boring, he tells you, goodbye, you are shit.
I did a week with Gaulier, and to me it seemed as though people fell into three categories. There were people who just seemed to be inherently funny. They you know, got put on stage. They were going to be gonged off when they stopped being entertaining, and they did almost nothing, and everybody wanted to watch them. Then, and I fell into this category, there was a middle category of people who managed to get the sort of audience interest for part of the time and would get gonged off, and as one went off would then suddenly get the audience's interest again, bizarrely, as one revealed a little bit of one's, you know, dissatisfaction and sort of oneself. And then there were people, a third category, who I think really weren't there in a suitably playful way, who found it very challenging. And I felt sorry for some of those, because they really didn't get to have a lot of fun, I felt, on the course, because nobody wanted to watch them.
Yeah.
As I say, it was that's the question. Are some people very much more watchable than others, or is it something that just comes through going out and taking workshops?
It's. I think through workshops you can develop. I think through lived experience is probably the biggest advantage to a clown. You know, I often find the people I really want to watch on stage are the ones that have built that connection with me, that there's something happening, there's almost a vibration between us. And sometimes they don't have to do anything. I just want to watch them because I want to see what they're going to do next, where they move, how they move, how they react to someone moving in their seat. And some people just have this beautiful way of forming one of those dreaded French words again, this complicity with an audience, this oneness. And I think you can learn elements of it, and you can learn techniques and tools for it, and you can become better at it. But I think life and living life and observing people is probably the greatest educator for me.
Now, so what I should just say here is, if there are people watching who have got questions to put to Simon, then please use the Q&A box. We'll have a look at it once in a while and find the question, find an opportunity to put that to Simon. But let me just also say now that Simon is not only a performer, but also does some lecturing and is studying for a PhD. Now, the MA is in Festive Arts, which isn't an MA I had heard of. So perhaps Festive Arts is.
Yeah. So what's Festive Arts? Festive Arts is it's a postgrad 1-year course at the Irish World Academy of Music Dance in University of Limerick. It's a creative course, so it's a mix of practical and academic. Typically, our students would be coming from a practice background, so they would be performers, creatives of some description. And what they're looking to do is add another strand to their career path. And that strand is Festive Arts. And what is Festive Arts? Well, principally, we look at things like parades, large spectacles, festival events. And what I mean by the word sort of festival events is this idea of almost carnival, taking the world and making it topsy-turvy, creating a liminal space that exists for a short period of time where people can drop out of their societal norms, experience the topsy-turvy, but feel safe that they're going to return to normality at some time. So we look at that, and we look at how festivity affects people, place, finance, infrastructure. So in semester 1, there's a chunk of work looking at research and discovery and local and global effects of festivals, and also looking at academic papers. So we can be more informed in making the decisions when we want to put on a festive event. Semester 2 moves through some elective study where the students can pick specialised subjects, what they want to do. They go on placement to work with a large organisation, typically running quite a significant size festival. And then at the end of semester 2, they have to put on their own event. Semester 3 is then thesis writing. One of the unique things about the thesis writing for the MA Festive Arts is you can do 3 strands. So one of them being a straight research thesis. Number 2 is half research and maybe a feasibility study for something that they're thinking about. And then strand 3 is they can do a performance that's related to festivity and their thesis. So it's this toe in the water to arts practice research. We're mixing the creative and the reflectionary with the academic, but all looking at this world of carnival and topsy-turvy.
Now, with carnival, then one of the immediate things that comes to people's minds, perhaps, is the Venice Carnival and the masks which are used there. And you have quite a lot of mask work. I can see them just on your bookshelf there behind you. quite a lot of mask work that you do. Does that play a part in the course, and to what extent are you still performing with mask?
Mask does play a significant part in the course, with this idea of, you know, in typically sort of the masked balls like the Venice Carnival or even Mardi Gras, where the mask is almost this permission to be mischievous because you're semi-hidden, you know, and it's an enabler to do, to be greedy, to be licentious, to be, you know, crass and vulgar. So there's elements of that in the carnival, but as part of the culture and performance module of the MA, I actually do quite significant work with mask that feeds into my own research about mask in performance, about mask opening up the body and being, and you know, how we communicate. In terms of my own work, yes, mask is significant, and a variety of masks. I suppose I still consider the red nose a mask of some description. You know, it hides part of your face. It's it has an archetypal image that when people see it, they recognize, oh, this is going to be a clown because it's got a red nose on. So it's a signal to an audience. It gives me permission immediately when I put it on to do stuff that associates with that archetype. So yeah, I see the nose as a mask. I use the nose, not in all my work, but in some of it. And I often use bits of masks. So mouth masks or partial masks to help me play other characters when I'm doing solo shows. And I also use full masks in some work. And through the workshops and the training that I do, I go through a series of masks from neutral through larvals into 4 temperaments and then into the red nose. So I sort of do a progression through mask. I don't teach mask as a discipline. I use mask as a tool to unlock other things. So if that helps, yeah.
Is there a point at which somebody who's been using mask, and then is there a point where they can discard it, where they can get all of the sentiment, all of the characterization, all the licentiousness of a character and portray it without the mask?
Well, I hope so, because that's the crux of the PhD. I'm snookered if not. Yeah, I mean, that's the journey I'm sort of towards the end of, is this idea of using the mask as a tool, helping embody sensation, so that when you know, you do a gesture or an action, or you feel something, that you can embody it. It isn't just a visual signal from a mirror. I don't use mirrors at all in my work. So it's all about this embodiment process and this understanding of the body in space and how it moves and how it feels and how it communicates. So yes, I firmly believe you can go through this journey of mask, and at the other side have found tools and techniques to enable you to burst forth without it. And really, as I say, that's what the PhD is about, is using mask and clown for multiple disciplines. So I'm interested in working with contemporary dancers and traditional dancers and musicians, using clown and mask techniques to help them build empathy and engagement and, you know, a relationship with an audience.
Fantastic. So if you were to cite perhaps some performers that those people watching, if you were to say, if you want to kind of get an idea of the work which interests me, you could maybe have a look on YouTube or when things come live. Are there any companies or any productions that really sing to you in this way?
Yeah, there's a couple. Rude Mechanicals, Knee High are very interesting. Simon McBurnley with Complicity. And then I'm a huge fan of Jacque Tati. You know, if you want to see beautiful human clown, watch Tati. You know, and it's the way he can integrate a little bit of business into a narrative so seamlessly. You know, if I was to say one clip to go and watch, there's a lovely clip where Tati is trying to get on a bicycle which is leaned against like a farmer's railing, and it's just fabulous. You know, you see him solve a problem but create a new problem and solve the problem, and it just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs, and it looks effortless and real, but there's so much work in it. So yeah, go and watch Jacque Tati, everyone.
And are you familiar with the work of his protege, Pierre Rete,
No.
who was married to Annie Fratellini?
Oh, yes.
Well, let me do. So Pierre Rete has a number of films, Rapture being one of them, but follows in a way some of the Jacque Tati tradition. Yeah, so for sure. I've also just got a note here on the side from Maggie Irving just saying that Gecko also features lots of clowning. She's making her recommendation there. And again, if anybody has got any questions, do ask. I'm seeing my internet connection's unstable. Let's see if I can get a question in before it fails. So Simon, is there a performance which stands out for you as being memorably an awful experience or memorably a wonderful experience?
Oh, right. Let me think. I suppose I've been very lucky, and I know I've been. I enjoy what I do, so it means I work hard. So I've been extremely lucky that I've had a long career and played in some fantastic places. I think in the last 10 years has been the more transformative, and it's because all kinds of things have happened. But in that period, one of the more strange performances I ever had to do, which was emotionally draining and extremely, extremely challenging, and I just didn't know how to approach it, was a very close friend of mine called Micheál O'Sullivan, who's an Irish composer, musician, and educator, passed away. And on the night he died, very shortly after he shuffled off his mortal coil, I got an email from him, and it said, "Simon, will you be a clown at my funeral?" And Micheál was methodical, to say the least, meticulous, and he had a whole itinerary booked and planned for me. And he wanted me to play the role of a psychopomp, the archetype of a psychopomp. He was very interested in mythology and especially sort of religious or ritualistic elements, and the story of Saint Michael taking the souls through this and to the other world, but also that Saint Michael was a mischievous person, and he's sort of cited as being a psychopomp. So he wanted me to be this kind of figure that took himself from this world to the new world. And basically he said that was it, you know, do this for me. Mee Hall was extremely well known in Ireland, so on the day of the funeral, all the big knobs are there and the hoi polloi, including the President of Ireland, Michael Higgins, and members of the senior armed forces, and probably the cream of Irish musicians and singers. So this was a strange gig. I had to meet and greet people. I promenaded the coffin up the central aisle. I sold programs during the service and said my condolences to everyone as they left the church. So that was a real insight into doing something different. It was not only challenging, but I think a couple of days later, I found it how rewarding it had been to just bring brief moments of Michael's own humour into his own goodbye to everyone from this world. So I think that's been the most difficult, challenging and rewarding all in one, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I can totally see that. And also the appeal of doing something so tailored, so meaningful.
Yeah.
And is that something that you explore in your PhD in any way, or in other work? Do you look for that very, very personal relationship?
Yes, and I suppose that's why I have moved into the world of the 1 hour show. The longer show gives me that ability to take a more detailed narrative. It allows me to play with more nuance and subtlety. It allows me not to just look for the laughs and the gags. It allows me to play with the whole human condition. And I suppose as I've got older as well, I don't run around as much as I used to, and I don't, so there's a different technique that starts to emerge. And I think for definitely the last 5 or 6 years, my whole work has been rooted in myself, even what would be classed as quite weird narratives, or there's elements of truth and there's honesty, and there's, at the end of the day, it's me standing in front of the audience saying, look, this is me. I'm going to tell you a story, but it's all rooted in me. To the point where my final examined performance of the PhD was a full mask piece. So a full mask, silent in terms of I don't talk throughout the whole piece. There is music. And I portray a middle-aged man who's been recently diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And I try to give the audience, through my physicality and through my presence on stage, an idea of what a day in the life of this guy must be. So yeah, my work is firmly rooted in me, and unashamedly, I stand on stage sort of at times almost naked in front of the audience and go, yeah, this is what you've got. It's not pretty, but bear with me.
That's sort of fantastic. Because it is ultimately, we are interested in the person, whether it's portrayed through a narrative, but we're looking for that connection, aren't we? Earlier we spoke about several examples of clown people to watch, and Jacque has said, are there any female performers who you would particularly cite?
Yes. One who comes immediately to mind is Iman Lizarzu. Iman lives in the States, in California. She runs a juggling company called Renegade. So she has that business, but she's a fabulous, beautiful clown to watch. She's a tiny dot of a woman, extremely physical. Reminds me a lot of Annie Fratellini. Most of her work is silent. It's very highly skilled, very highly choreographed, but every time you watch her, you feel like it's the first time you've seen it. She has this, I don't know how to describe it. She just has this ability to connect. You watch her on stage and you fall in love with this character on stage, and you're just willing this character to succeed in all her trials and tribulations. So yeah, someone to watch would definitely be Iman Lizarzu.
That's fantastic. We had a question right at the beginning that Susie Maxwell Stewart asked, saying, what's the difference historically between commedia and gesturing? Any ideas?
Oh, where's Ollie Crick when you need him? I suppose from where I see commedia, and this is, extremely well researched genre. I see commedia as a troupe of performers, typically may have been family, telling a scenario. So they have a building block of story that they can improvise, dance and play music around. They arrive in a piazza or a square. They set up a trestle stage. They've got one of the members of the family goes out and barks and pulls a crowd, and they perform as an ensemble with an element of structure. Whereas gesturing, to me, I know very little about gesturing. It's not something I've dabbled with, but I'm guessing it's more of a solo performance, and there's an element of the jester is employed by a specific figure. So he has to deliver certain things to that figure in terms of knowledge, or he's suddenly out of work. So he can play with parody and humour, but always with the understanding that he's employed by the hierarchy who, whereas the commedia troupe, they're looking for that joy and delight, and and it's a troupe, it's an ensemble approach. I don't know, I'd be delighted to hear other people's kind of comments who probably know more about gesturing than me.
That's a good point to say that we've got 10 minutes now until the end of the session. So if you have a question or a comment to make, this would be a good time to start putting it in if you want to get it answered. I would certainly echo that feeling of the jester being the soloist against the ensemble, and also that in a way their whole thing is to be opportunistic at all times. It is just to find the opportunity to do the dance, do the song, tell the gag, hit the person, whatever it is that works for that moment in time. Totally reactionary to the situation. Okay, any questions coming up? Let me just double check my Q&A box here. We've had that one from Yoti. So looking at my list here, I think we've covered most of the questions I've got to ask. So let's ask the contemporary one, which is looking at festive art, looking at performance. If the solution for the coronavirus isn't found within a couple of years, how will your work and how will the industry change and the art form?
Help. Yeah, I mean, it's a massive conundrum, and it's something that I suppose for the last 2 months I've been racking my brains as to, because I'm a people person. My work is breaking down that fourth wall. It's standing in the crowd and communicating and talking and bouncing backwards and forwards, and it poses huge complications for what we see as clown, or how we clown, or clowning. Or I've tried various things on little videos to just as experiments, and if I'm blunt, this whole world of the internety Zooms, chit chats, and things, I find it hugely sensory overload. I find I'm looking at multiple screens, I'm hearing other sounds, I'm trying to do different things. I don't know if people are listening to me. I don't know if my voice has gone sounding like Metal Mickey, and there's pauses and delays. So it's a weird conundrum, and I'm sort of constantly bouncing questions off friends and colleagues and firing things up on social media to say, well, would this work? Could we do this? Could we do that? And I think the challenge for us is I don't know if we're going to find an answer, but we have to keep questioning, and we have to keep saying, well, even if there is a solution to this, which I'm confident there will be, this is an opportunity now to explore the form of what we do and to challenge ourselves to just explore it, to play with where we are. And that's what clowns do, we play. So how can we play with the current situation we're in? And that's all I'd urge anyone to do, is question, challenge, play, fail, try again. But I don't know if I have an answer. I really don't, Charlie.
I think that's brilliant. We had that in from Susie saying, how do you see clowns as social comment? And I think that in that answer, you said how it is as a social comment. You said it is to engage with the world we are in and to find some kind of response, to inquire, to be inquisitive. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we see clown as this ultimate human and human connection, everything we do is a social comment as a clown. You know, often I like to go for the more darker elements of human condition. So I like the idea of my character being a raving alcoholic or being a destitute on the street. And in a tour that I did with a show called Nose Business, that's how the audience found me. They found me on stage surrounded by rubbish, and I was begging for money off them. And they knew that money was going to get spent on drink. So you set this, you can, with a longer show, you can set this kind of premise and understanding. And there's a joyous thing with an audience, that when you can get an audience to laugh at the taboo. You know, as a clown, we can say the things that no one else would say. Because if someone else said them, it would be, oh, shock factor, I'm offended. As a clown, we can position things that people find it humorous. And it's almost the Mary Poppins factor, you know, the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. That a clown can do this, and people reflect and think, and that's the most beautiful form of social commentary, that you know, people engage with you and they believe your story and they laugh and they go on this journey with you. But often when they leave the venue or they leave your show, they're talking about things that are a little bit deeper, and things might pop into their mind a day or so later. The amount of times I get an email or a Facebook message a week later and go, oh, I can't believe you said that, and we laughed at it. So, you know, a clown has permission to tell truths, regardless of how painful those truths are.
That's fantastic, and I think as we come up to hit the hour mark, let's take the opportunity to mention the next session coming up, talking about that painful aspect of clowning, which is one thing that for sure Chris the Piss, who's talking to Sued Broadway on Wednesday, is all knowledgeable about. For now, I'd like to thank Simon Thompson for giving us the time today, and my connection being unstable, to thank all of the Patreons, all the people who have given to Patreon to support the continuance of Clown Power on Zoological. And as the last mention, to say that on this coming Saturday, I'll also be doing a talk about the marvellous crags. You can see the poster in the background. For those people with an interest in the evolution of popular entertainment and global everything, and the history stuff, fun, fast. Okay, there we go. I think if people want to give a virtual wave, a big round of applause to Simon Thompson, and we can say thank you very much and tune in next time.
Yeah, and thanks so much, Charlie. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for everyone who tuned in and listened to my dulcet Lancashire voice.
Fantastic, very good. We'll leave it to Sasha and Dave in the backroom boys to gradually